Johnny Sports Network here to provide you with my Week 4 college football predictions. What a week we had this past Saturday. So much drama in college football. Georgia Tech upset Clemson. Vanderbilt, a dominant performance on the road against South Carolina. We had a couple of games that, when the season is said and done, we could look back and debate on that being the game of the season. Georgia and Tennessee went to overtime. Texas A&M on the road in South Bend upsets Notre Dame in the final seconds. What does Week 4 have in store for us? Our 7 games on the docket this week for our main 7. Florida and number 4 Miami in the Sunshine Showdown. Tulane and number 13 Ole Miss. South Carolina and number 23 Missouri. Number 21 Michigan and Nebraska, who many think that Nebraska should be ranked in the top 25, as this should be, to a lot of people, a top 25 matchup. Number 22 Auburn and number 11 Oklahoma. Number 17 Texas Tech and number 16 Utah. And for my game of the week, number 9 Illinois and number 19 Indiana. And before I get to my picks for the week for our main 7, I do want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in to the Week 3 predictions last week. And as always, your support means everything to me. Without further ado, let's get to the Week 4 college football predictions right here on the Johnny Sports Network. The first game on the docket this week, the Sunshine Showdown, Florida and number 4 Miami. Last week, Florida began their very treacherous schedule against LSU on the road. And in that game, surprisingly, Florida outplayed LSU. Florida had 366 yards of total offense compared to just 322 for LSU. They had 23 first downs compared to just 10 for LSU. They were 6 for 17 on third down compared to just 4 for 14 for LSU. Florida had the ball for 37 minutes and 46 seconds compared to just 22 minutes and 14 seconds for LSU. What ultimately cost Florida in the game is it was a very winnable game for them. 5 DJ Lagway interceptions. And of those 5 interceptions, 4 were in LSU territory and 1 was a pick 6. So that really has to make you consider what if. What if DJ Lagway only threw 3 interceptions? Or only 2 interceptions? And despite all the criticism Florida has gotten these last 2 weeks, their defense has only given up an average of 12.66 points per game. And it's even less than that because the pick 6 is included in that total. Meanwhile, for Miami, the good Carson Beck has shown up so far this season, completing 78.3% of his passes in 2 career games against Florida. He's 44 of 68, 624 yards, 4 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions. The big talking point for Miami last season was their defense and their lack thereof. They are 38th in total defense so far this season. And I'm going to be honest. For a brief moment, I was tempted to pick Florida to, at the bare minimum, cover the 7.5 that Miami is currently favored by. Because I did admire the effort that Florida showed against LSU last week, as I made a statement that I was intrigued to see how Florida would respond after losing at home to South Florida the week prior. But I just can't see the defense carrying Florida 2 weeks in a row against a top 5 team. Plus, Miami, it was a dominant performance over that same South Florida team. I do think Miami, they do win this game fairly easily. I'll be surprised if Florida's defense keeps Florida in the game again this week. I think Miami wins at the minimum 17 points. But it honestly could be much more than that. Up next, we have Tulane and number 13 Ole Miss. For Tulane, this is a statement-making game for them as they are in the race among the group of 5 teams for the automatic group of 5 playoff bid. And with a win on the road in Oxford against Ole Miss, that would put them in the driver's seat for that automatic group of 5 playoff bid. But is Tulane going to have to defeat Austin Simmons or Trinidad Chambliss? As Austin Simmons, he was a game time decision last week for Ole Miss against Arkansas. But Ole Miss, they ended up starting Trinidad Chambliss, and he had 415 total yards of offense against Arkansas and 3 total touchdowns. Duke and Tulane was one of the games in the best of the rest for last week. And I talked about Jake Retzlaff not being the most accurate quarterback in all of college football, as he's only completed 59% of his passes this season, but he has managed the games well. And that was the case at BYU last year, where Jake Retzlaff was a game manager. He does have 288 rushing yards this season and 6 rushing touchdowns, including 4 last week against Duke. But I think regardless of whether it's Austin Simmons returning for Ole Miss this week, or if they have Trinidad Chambliss starting again this week, as we saw Trinidad Chambliss, he's completely capable of being a starting quarterback in college football. As he did everything he needed to do against Arkansas last week in what was a high-scoring game, I just think either way, Ole Miss is going to be way too much offensively for Tulane. As Tulane is 64th in scoring defense, they are 91st in total defense, while Ole Miss is 11th in total offense. Wide receiver Harrison Wallace, he's 3rd in the FBS in receiving yards with 339. And I honestly think Ole Miss is going to win by at least 3 touchdowns. Because Ole Miss, they have played much more better competition so far this season than Tulane. And I think it's going to be another week of having to figure out who's going to be in that driver's seat for the group of 5 for that playoff bid. Up next, we have South Carolina and number 23 Missouri. Missouri has been one of the biggest surprises in college football so far this season. Quarterback Bo Pribula, Penn State transfer, 791 passing yards, 7 touchdown passes, just 1 interception, and a completion percentage of 76.4%. Running back Ahmad Hardy, he's 2nd in the FBS in rushing yards with 462. Missouri is 8th in scoring offense, averaging 51.7 points per game. They're 4th in total offense, averaging 587 yards a game, and they're 5th in total defense, only giving up an average of 200.7 yards a game. The main story going into this game, South Carolina quarterback Lenoris Sellers, his status is in doubt as he left the game last week against Vanderbilt with a head injury. And based off of the coaches poll, this is a top 25 matchup, as South Carolina is 24th in the coaches poll. Regardless of whether Lenora Sellers plays in this game or not, I'm going to pick Missouri either way, and I honestly would pick Missouri to win even if Lenora Sellers wasn't in concussion protocol. As South Carolina, they have arguably been the most disappointing team this season so far. As in the offseason, there was talks about South Carolina being a potential contender in the SEC. They are 116th in total offense, only averaging 303 yards a game. They're 47th in run defense, and that's a big reason why I think Missouri wins this game handily, as I think Ahmad Hardy is going to have a big game against South Carolina's run defense. And that is despite the run defense being the current strength of this South Carolina team. I'm going to go with Missouri to win this game by 14 at the minimum. I said a couple of weeks ago, and I said in my takeaways from last week on YouTube Shorts, that if Bo Pribula keeps playing the way that he's playing, Missouri is going to upset some teams that not many people will see coming. And I think Missouri, they win with or without Lenora Sellers at the bare minimum by 14 points, with or without him. Number 21, Michigan and Nebraska. Sharon Moore will not be on the sidelines for this game for Michigan as part of his self-imposed suspension for his role in the Michigan sign stealing scandal. This will be the second career road start for Michigan quarterback Bryce Underwood. Justice Haynes is fifth in the FBS in rushing yards with 388 rushing yards on the season, and Nebraska running back Emmett Johnson, seventh in the FBS with 326 rushing yards on the season so far. So anticipate a lot of running in this game. Nebraska is ninth in scoring offense, averaging 49 a game, 10th in total offense, averaging 545 yards per game. We know that both teams are going to run the football a bunch in this game, and a big determining factor on who wins this game: can Nebraska contain the Michigan running game? Because in the first 3 weeks of this season, the run defense has been Nebraska's biggest weakness. They're 75th in run defense, giving up 136 rushing yards a game. And if Nebraska can contain Michigan's running game, force Bryce Young to have to make throws down the field, Nebraska's leading the FBS in pass defense. I do think this game right here for Nebraska, it's going to determine how Nebraska is going to be moving forward the rest of this season. And if Nebraska were to win this game, I do think for Nebraska, 9-10 wins could be on the table for them this season. But as I said before, Nebraska is one of those teams where I personally can't pick them to win 9-10 games until they can show me that they can. I do think in this game, however, as much as I do think that Michigan is a much better team running the football, I think Nebraska contains Michigan's running game enough to win this game and move into the top 25 in the rankings. And I think the home crowd will be a difference in this game, forcing Bryce Young to throw the football down the field. I do think this game is going to go down to the end, and Nebraska gets the 3-point victory. Number 22 Auburn and number 11 Oklahoma. And for Auburn, quarterback Jackson Arnold makes his return to Norman. Jackson Darnold was in and out of the starting quarterback role at Oklahoma last season. He enters the transfer portal. Auburn acquires him through the transfer portal, and Jackson Arnold is having a solid start to the season. I'd say a strong one. A difference maker against Baylor using his legs and running the football. He's completed almost 70% of his passes so far this season. Auburn running back Jeremiah Cobb, he is in the top 10 in the FBS in rushing yards. 314 on the season so far, 10th in the FBS. And I bring that up because starting defensive lineman for Oklahoma, R. Mason Thomas, will be suspended in the first half of this game as he was ejected for targeting in last week's win on the road against Temple. The Auburn defense has 11 sacks so far this season, tied for 6th in the FBS. Oklahoma quarterback John Mateer, who transferred from Washington State last season, 944 passing yards so far in the year, 7th in the FBS. And Oklahoma is currently 28th in the FBS in total offense. They're 2nd in pass defense. I do think despite that, I think they will be able to make this game close. I do think in the first half we are going to see Auburn assert the run and try to take advantage of R. Mason Thomas serving the first half suspension. And if Eric Singleton Jr. and Cam Coleman, if they can find a way to get open on Oklahoma secondary, which I think they're going to be able to do in this game, despite them being 2nd in the FBS in pass defense, then Auburn has a chance to pull off the upset. I do, however, think Oklahoma is going to win this game, but I think Auburn, they do make this game close. I think Auburn keeps it to within a possession. And I do think the Sooners, they do get the 4-point victory. I would say in the ballpark of 28-24. Number 17, Texas Tech. Number 16, Utah. A matchup between two of the frontrunners in the Big 12. Texas Tech quarterback Baron Morton. 923 passing yards this season so far. 9th in the FBS. Texas Tech, they lead the FBS in scoring offense, averaging 58 points a game. They're also 2nd in total offense. While for Utah, they acquired Devin Dampier from New Mexico in the transfer portal in the offseason. And I do think he is a good fit for Utah. The MO for Utah under head coach Kyle Whittingham has been their defense. Utah is 8th in scoring defense, only giving up an average of 8.33 points per game. They're 13th in the FBS in total defense. John Henry Daly is tied for 2nd in the FBS for the most sacks with 5 on the season so far. During the offseason going into the season, a lot of eyes were on Texas Tech. As Texas Tech, they were one of the favorites, maybe even the favorite, depending on who you talk to win the Big 12. after everything they have done with NIL and the transfer portal. While Utah, they were looking to respond after a miserable 2024 season. And based off of these two team styles of play, something's going to have to give. Is it going to be Texas Tech's offense? The Texas Tech offense, who's averaging 58 points per game, but this is Texas Tech's first strong opponent so far this season. Or is it going to be Utah's defense? Is Utah's defense going to be able to slow down the high-scoring Texas Tech offense? I did mention Utah quarterback Devin Dampier earlier, and I do think he is capable of keeping up with this Texas Tech offense, depending on how much support the Utah defense gives him in this matchup. I do think a lot of people will pick Texas Tech to win this game because they'll look at Texas Tech and say, well, they're averaging 58 a game, and not realize who they've played the first few weeks of the season, while I think Utah's defense will be a difference in the game in being able to slow down Texas Tech's offense. I think Utah wins by 7. And finally, what in my opinion is the game of the week, number 9 Illinois and number 19 Indiana. Illinois is currently 5th in scoring defense, only giving up 7.3 points per game on average. And going into the season, Illinois, they had some fairly strong expectations. Some have the thoughts of Illinois has that potential to be a contender in the Big Ten and compete with Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. The question for Indiana going into the season was, can they repeat what they did last season? Out of all the surprise teams in college football last year, Indiana was the most surprising. They finished 11-2 on the year, made the college football playoff. Their 2 losses last year, Ohio State and Notre Dame, the 2 teams that played in the national championship game. Indiana acquired Cal transfer quarterback Fernando Mendoza in the transfer portal, and he is having a strong start to the season. He's 55 of 76 for 708 passing yards, 9 touchdown passes, and 0 interceptions. Illinois quarterback Luke Altmaier, 56 of 78 on the season, 709 passing yards, 8 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. Leading the Illinois receiving game, Hank Beatty, 5th in the FBS in all-purpose yards so far this season. Indiana is currently 3rd in total offense, averaging almost 592 yards a game. They're 3rd in rushing offense, running for almost 308 yards a game. Illinois is currently 14th in run defense, only giving up 74.7 rushing yards per game. Indiana is 9th in total defense. And we know that Brett Bielema is going to run the football a lot in this game. And the weakness so far for Indiana is the run defense. They're 54th in the FBS in run defense, allowing 115.3 rushing yards per game. I was a little surprised to see Indiana favored by 4.5 in this game. A couple weeks ago, Illinois had what I thought was a trap game on the road against Duke. And Duke, they had a good start to the game, but a muffed punt was the first of many turnovers for Duke in that game, and it was why Illinois was able to dominate the second half of that game after being only ahead by 1 point at the half. I do think in this game, however, I think Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt are going to be difference makers for Indiana in this game, as I do like Indiana's receiving core a little bit better than Illinois'. I am going to pick Indiana to win this game, but I'm only going to pick them to win by about 3 or 4. I do think that there is strong value with the points in Illinois, knowing that Brett Bielema's MO is to run the football in heavy doses, and Indiana, with their weakest point on their team being the run defense. I think it's in the neighborhood of 27-23 or 27-24. And that will do it for my week 4 college football predictions. That was the main 7. The week 3 NFL predictions will be uploaded tomorrow. The week 4 best of the rest will be uploaded on Wednesday. My week 3 college football takeaways and my week 2 NFL takeaways will be uploaded on YouTube Shorts later on in the week. Comment, like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. And until next time, have a wonderful day.